earlier today, what am I even going to do this show on, Father? And he led me to an article I'd written probably about 12 years ago. And it's just the basics, but there's so many people that don't even seem like they can grasp the basics. It's always the basics of anything, but it's always kind of fun just to go back and go over the basics, because Father said the last days are going to be as in the days of Noah. And people don't really understand what was going on in the days of Noah. That's why they can't grasp the last days. And so there's those who are waking up and those who are just not even close to getting there. And so it always seems so aggravating perhaps the believers of the Most High to have understanding and try to teach it to the others, and they just reject it and just spit out ignorance and hate and everything else. And it just seems like, there's a war of knowledge and revelation among the Father's people going on at all times. The haves and the have-nots, the haves versus the have-nots, and trying to pull them up and awake them. And it just never ends, folks. It just never ends. If we were ever one cohesive body, we could be quite dangerous together. But the unified, those who want to disunify and divide the Lord's people are hard at work. And they're servants of Satan who dress themselves up as servants of the Lord. They appear to be godly people, but they're not the Father's people. They're Satan's people. And so they keep Christians in ignorance. Lucifer said that those in the churches were his. As long as people stayed in the churches, they were his. And so what does that tell you? When you look at the seventh church, the church of Laodicea, it signifies the church of the last days. The Lord is seen standing on the outside of the door, knocking to get in, but he's not welcome. And people think, oh, that's during the tribulation period. Really? Do you think the churches are going to be rich and in need of nothing during the tribulation period? Do you think churches are going to be open? Do you think they're going to be filled with people meeting on Sundays? No, it's now. It's the here and now. The Church of Laodicea is the here and now church. And the reason the Lord's on the outside of the door is because the people don't want him in there. They don't want the truths. They don't want their mind-controlled boxes that they've put around their minds disrupted. They want to keep on believing what Satan's servants are telling them. They own the seminaries today. They're all controlled by the Satanists. They manage what those pastors in training are learning. They stick them to the KJV and stick with the narratives of the KJV. That's what they want them to do. Because the KJV was crafted in a way so that it always sticks to simple narratives. And that's what they want the pastors to teach out. That's not a threat to them. The KJV is not a threat to them. And those sitting in the churches today think it's the only power and truth they need is what's in the KJV. They don't understand the Word became flesh. The living Son of God. He arose from the grave. We're to go sit at his feet and learn from him. See, initially that's what the temples were for. People didn't know how to read and write. Most of Israel were farmers. And they would go to the temple to learn. They would learn what was written in the Torah, what they were instructed to do, how they were to be. And that's why they would go. Today's churches, they don't instruct you in anything. They give you a psychology lesson every week, psychology. They're not teaching Bible prophecy. They're not teaching holiness or hell. It's psychology, feel-good medicine, feel-good doctrines. Oh, don't worry about tribulation period. You'll be raptured out before it happens. And they pound the podiums, and they laugh, and they hiss, and they smile. And it's not true. Most of the churches today will still be here up to the midpoint of the tribulation period. You know, in the days of Noah, and I want to go back to some parts of Enoch, because Enoch was known as a man who walked with God, one of the greatest prophets ever walked this earth. Half the church doesn't even know him. They kept his book out of the KJV, and one of the reasons, it was actually in there at one time, and they took it out. It's in the Ethiopian version. It's in the Catholic version. It's not in the American version. Why isn't it not in the American version of the KJV? They didn't want people to wake up and learn what was going on around them. They wanted them to stay ignorant to what was going on. You know, Enoch gave too much information. They wanted the Christian churches to stick to the little narratives that were outlined and defined and cut down in the KJV. That's why I hate truth seekers. People who go outside the box, people who go outside the KJV, people who are sitting at the feet of the Father asking for truth in all things. And he leads them to books like Enoch and Jasher and Jubilees, all books that were mentioned by Yahushua and the apostles themselves in the KJV. But then the books are nowhere included in the KJV. There's a lot of books in the Nag Hammadi that were also found in the Dead Sea Scrolls. There's a lot of things I don't even touch on. But back in the day, back in Noah's day, you have to think of the setup. Let's go back to the setup back in the day. Back in the day, if you could picture the east coast of Africa and the Gulf of Aden there, and the lower part of Saudi Arabia there, I think that's Yemen, that whole area was the ancient Garden of Eden. Everyone thinks it's over in Iraq under the desert on the Persian Gulf. That's not true. The Gulf of Eden, or Aden, was actually the Gulf of Eden. It used to be a river. Now it's spread out a lot more because a lot of the garden was sunk. But there's still a portal gate there. That's why a lot of the international navies end up meeting there on occasion. You'll see all the navies lining up there. And it's because there's a portal there. There's some kind of gateway there. And for some reason it threatens them. I don't know what these ships think they're going to do. If there's alien ships coming through that portal or what's coming through that portal, they think their guns are going to shoot it down or what? You know, they could all just get sunk. I'm obviously not the Admiral of the Navy. But I'm obviously a little smarter than they are. But anyway, they like to go and conglomerate around that portal area, gateway out there. But that is the ancient Garden of Eden area. And if you go farther to the north, in Jordan, is Mount Sinai. Now, everybody thinks, because of the Hollywood narrative, that Mount Sinai is in the desert between Egypt and Israel. That's actually the fake Mount Sinai. The real Mount Sinai is in Jordan. As they crossed over the Red Sea and on into Jordan, they went into Jordan. They didn't go into the desert. They ended up there. Don't get me wrong. But not initially. They crossed the Red Sea and over into Jordan. And it was there at the Mount Sinai that Moses received the Ten Commandments. when they ticked the Lord off is when he sent them up to the desert and had them wander for 40 years. That entire generation had died off. So originally, the whole Garden of Eden was right smack there in right in the Middle East, right there between Africa and Saudi Arabia, right there at the Gulf of Aden. Now, what was over in Babylon, that's 100 miles of sand now, buried. When the Lord destroys something and he judges something, you better believe he's going to put it under 100 miles of sand or 100 miles of water. He gets rid of it for good. The Persian Gulf actually used to be some mountains there in the Gulf. It's now water. But it actually used to be some mountains there. And the desert was in front of it. Well, but it's a desert now. But it used to be a thriving city in a thriving technological area of science and math and technology. That's where Lucifer's faction settled on the earth. While Lucifer was in the Garden of Eden seducing Lilith and then seducing Eve, his people had set up camp over by the Persian Gulf, his faction of reptiles. Well, they all turned into reptiles, but at the time they were fallen angels. And they had built a city there. And there is a gateway there. I don't know if you've heard about the gateway of Eridu, and there's other gateways that they have found in the area. That's what they were after. These gateways are portals. And these portals are what get you in and out of Earth's atmosphere. You don't just get into an airplane and fly from the Earth to the moon or from Mars to Earth. There is a covering over Earth, around Earth. It's a shield. In the Bible codes, it's called a partition. I don't know what science calls it. I don't know. I don't know what they call it. But there's portal ways. Think of them as long hallways up into the sky. And that's, when you access a portal, is how you can get access into Earth. Through the partition, the covering around Earth, and you get access into Earth. You have to get into one of these portal ways, one of these hallways in. And these hallways are called gates. They're called gateways. And there are angels who guard over them. They're called watchmen. They're called gatekeepers. That's where that term watchman initially came from, because it was part of an angelic order in our angelic rank. They would watch over the gates, the access points to Earth. And so typically wherever these gates are, there's 6 around the world, but there are others that can be opened temporarily and shut. And so this is what Lucifer is trying to force with CERN, with the Large Hadron Collider. He's trying to force open portals, temporary portals, so that beings from other parts of our aerospace and space can get access into Earth. Now, if you're a fan of looking at nauseating photos all day from NASA, you will always see activity in front of the sun, around the sun. That's because there is a gateway in front of the sun. It is called the East Gate. And that is an access point to Earth from that East Gate. And so that's why there's always fighting up there. And the only reason you see it is because the sun is there and you can see it. Otherwise, every place else in the world can be pretty dark. That place always has the most activity. It's the most important gate. And so that's why you'll always see UFO activity. It's not always UFO activity. It's a lot of angel pods that are in the area, too. I remember when NASA posted a video once of a fight in front of the sun, and I saw one of the white angel pods, and I almost flipped. And I had saved that video, but it was on my other computer that crashed. Would love to find that again. People don't believe angels have pods, airplanes. They're wrong. They do. They're like little fighter jets. I call them pods. You know, in Star Wars, they show these little pods that they fly. There's a lot of truth in Star Wars. It's just backwards. But a lot of the stuff you see actually exists. There's a lot of truth to it. But angels do have these fighter jets. And I'm not saying angels are aliens and they fly in UFOs. I'm just... Where do you think Lucifer gets it? Lucifer was a high-ranking angel. He was a prince. He was one of the Father's children. All of his that fell with him were high-ranking, high-standing angels in heaven at one point. And so when they rebelled against heaven, do you really think they came up with anything original on their own? They just took everything they had with them. And he ruled over his own planets that he had taken over in heaven or given to him, abandoned. He ruled over them for 1,000 years. So it's not like this rebellion between Lucifer and the Father happened and ended in 30 days or less. I mean, it could have if the Father wanted it to. But once something starts to happen, and you'll learn this, the Father will let it roll. He will allow it to roll and see what happens. And yeah, sometimes you just want to bang your head against the wall, but that's what he does. That's what he does. That's our Father. And he allowed it to happen and go on for 1,000 years before he'd had enough. So everything Lucifer took with him was actually at one point something that already existed in heaven, that he already had as a high-ranking angel. And pods were one of these things. They had pods. They could fly around. You know, there was heaven was a heliocentric system with the sun in the center and heavenly planets around it. And you fly from one planet to the next in like 5-10 minutes. You could fly around a planet. They had these, I don't know how else to describe it, but like subway chutes. Have you ever heard about the high-speed subway trains that they have under the earth, in the middle of the earth, where they can zip around the planet? And these tunnels and high-speed subways they've built. On heavenly planets, they have these things that are chutes, kind of like subway chutes, tunnels around the planets. And all you have to do as an angel is get into one of those things, and you just zip around the planet in 2 seconds. I mean, that's how, it's fast. It's not like you have to sit and fly with your wings around the planet. You can get up into a chute and just go where you want to go. It's like a heavenly roadmap system for angels. I don't know how else to describe it. And they have them everywhere. Anywhere you want to go, you just get up and go into the chute, and boom, you could be there in seconds. It's really cool, really fascinating. So not every angel has a pod, because it's not necessary unless you're in the protection forces, and those were never necessary until Lucifer's rebellion. We still had pods before then. They could travel out in the universe and map things out and do all kinds of things. We weren't just stuck on a heavenly planet. But it's something that would have been rewarded to you as well, not something you can buy at a local pod lot. You would have to earn it, That's how heaven is. You earn your rewards. Nothing's just handed to you. It's how it is when you leave Earth. You're rewarded for your deeds on Earth. Nothing's going to be handed to you. You earn what you get when you go to heaven. If you don't earn anything, you just, you're at the bottom level. Work your way up. So these fights going on in front of the sun, sometimes you can catch them. Lately, though, like I said a couple weeks ago, there was a fleet of Anik ships that had come in the Anunnaki. I think there was 48 at the time, 47 smaller ones and a huge mothership. And now there's like 1,000 of them. And there are just all kinds of creatures coming in. That's why they're getting more prevalent in the skies. People are getting a lot more videos of them. There's always a strange-looking ship in the west. There was one in the northwest. A lot of these are the Anik ships. And when you see the ones with the green lights, those are the ones you just, whenever you see an alien ship, you just want to point an orgone pipe at it or ask the Lord to destroy it or whatever. Because they're all vile, they all come in to feed off of Earth. They feed off of humans. We taste pretty good to them. We're tasty. They've been abducting humans off the Earth for ages, forever. People say there's no human life on any other planets. They're wrong. They've been abducted off Earth and taken to other planets and used as breeding farms for millennia. They were taken off from before the time of the flood. They were rushing their offspring off the Earth then to try to save them from the flood. The humans, their kids, Lucifer's and Lilith, and then they brought them back. Maybe not all of them, but over the years, humans have been taken off the Earth and taken to other planets. People want to say that there's no life supported on other planets, and that's just feeding into Naz's lies, because that's what they tell you. That's what they tell you. Now they're going to come after me. I'm getting hot already. They always start the satellite attacks. You start feeling that heat hit. You get about 10 minutes into the show, and I'm starting to rip clothes off. It gets so hot. But these ships are coming in, and these Aniks, these Anunnakis are a branch of Lucifer's reptiles. Now, the reptilians that were close to Lucifer were the smart ones. They were the scientists, the leaders, technological engineers. He always had the smartest of the smart close to him. And they were the ones who would build things like CERN and Hadron Colliders and Nibiru's and, the leaders. He always kept them around him. These beings who were once fallen angels, once, standing angels, you could say, had offspring. They can procreate. I don't know how many times I have to say over and over and over again that angels can procreate. Because there's one verse in the Bible about angels not procreating, and everybody generalizes that to mean all of them don't. And that's not true. Lucifer procreated. The angels that fell with him procreated. The Watchers' rebellion listed in the book of Enoch and took human women and impregnated them, and the Nephilim were born, the giants were born, the giants were their offspring. They could procreate with humans. The giants were their offspring, and there were at least 200 cities of giants at one time. There was 20 alone just in Canaan. Moses talks about it. Jacob, or Joshua and Caleb, had to destroy 20 cities of giants. And they described them as so big that they were just grasshoppers in their sights. They were grasshoppers. That's how big these giants. And the king of Og was described as about 9.5 feet tall. Goliath was about 9 feet tall. And there were giants much larger than that existed at the time. Enoch talks about two brothers, that one was 30 foot tall and the other one was 33 foot tall. That's huge. And they would eat hundreds of cattle a day. And when they ran out of cattle, they would start eating humans. So they would try to keep the cattle herd farms up to keep them satisfied so they'd stop eating humans. But see, this is what was going on back in the days of Noah, folks. You got these huge giants running around, eating everybody. People running in fear from their lives from giants coming at them. And the giants taking over the earth, basically building their own cities and surrounding them with walls so that they wouldn't be, I don't know who they think's going to come in them, but they had walls. Maybe they figured the humans would try to, some kind of stupid uprising against them or whatever, because they wouldn't have done anything. These things were 10, 15, 20, 25 feet tall. But either way, there was 20 cities just in Canaan. There was about 200 cities around the earth total. And you've seen their bones. The Smithsonian Institute in D.C. has tried to hide this fact of giants on our planet for years. And they've destroyed and purposely sabotaged the bones of giants. And we have their mounds. Just here in Ohio, we have the Serpent Mound, southern Ohio. Ohio has a long history of giants here. And they're scattered all over the West. Mounds and giant burial places. Because giants were everywhere. They roamed the earth. There wasn't just a handful stuck in the desert in Iraq. This is the mindsets, people develop. And it's because it's the one that's painted for us from the time we're little. You never really grasp the reality and truth of things. And when you start to question things, your religious leaders will make you feel like you're being unloyal to God. That, that's just lies, they'll tell you. And you feel afraid to question anything because you'll go to hell. That's how they control you. Fear, intimidation. Keep you in line. You believe what we tell you. Don't question things outside what we tell you. And if we don't have an answer, then it didn't exist. That's usually the basic attitude for a lot of them. If they didn't have an answer, it just didn't exist. It just wasn't truth. That's how they keep you dumbed down. Now, the angels who actually fell and procreated with the human women, they would go back to space. It's a different atmosphere, a different dimension. They're dimensional beings. They're not from the earth dimension. They're from the fifth dimension, sixth dimension, heavenly dimensions. Not the fifth. The fifth is not heavenly. The fifth is more like a neutral dimension. But the sixth on up are heavenly dimensions. They'd come down. They would rape human women. They weren't dating and courting them and marrying them. They would just rape them. And they'd go back up to heaven or space because by that time they had been kicked out of heaven for the sins against earth that they were committing, sins against mankind, coming down and raping women. They ended up forfeiting their rank and spots in heaven. They were watchers. And Enoch talks about this. If you read the book of Enoch, chapters 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, he talks about the whole Watchers' rebellion, the fall. In my one article, the difference between fallen angels, demons, aliens, Jedi, and the Watchers, I have about 10 chapters of Enoch listed, the passages. So if you don't want to go do research online and read Enoch yourself, you can go read that article. It's on my website, SherryShriner.com. Just click on articles and find my article, the difference between fallen angels, demons, etc. And I list all these passages of Enoch in my article. So the angels would come down, impregnate human women, go back to space. The human women would give birth to these giants. And this started a whole slew of civilization of giants here, because then the giants would procreate with each other. And that's after the flood. That's not before. That's after. People want to say, well, weren't all the giants wiped out by the flood? No. They were here. But if all the giants had been wiped out, the same thing happened after the flood. They returned and started all over again. Caleb and Joshua wouldn't have had to destroy 20 cities of giants. Now, once they destroyed those cities, they pretty much wiped out the remnant of the giants, because a lot of them, the bulk of them, had been killed in the flood. And then also rose up. They are a lot of immortalized as Greek mythology gods. You know, you've got all your Greek gods, and I can't stand Greek mythology. But did you know that the word mythology actually means fiction or non-fiction, truth? You consider mythology as fiction, but it's actually the opposite. It actually means it's truth, it's factual. Those beings, like Hercules and all them, immortalized demigods. And a demigod is a hybrid. It's a half human, half fallen angel breed. It's a demigod. That's what they call them, demigods, because they had supernatural abilities. Now today, we have millions of hybrids amongst us, humans with alien DNA, but we don't consider them demigods. They don't have the physical strength and abilities that the hybrids had back earlier in the day. They have psychic abilities. They get really played by that. And then the problem is that a lot of them are taken to these government-run MK Ultra bases, and they coerce them into opening up their third eye and the mind's eye. The third eye is what they call it. And when you do that, it's like opening Pandora's box. It's very demonic, very enslaving to do that, because it opens a gateway for demonic possession. And so these kids that are born hybrids, who open their third eye and think it's the greatest thing on the planet because they have psychic abilities most humans don't, it's because they've opened that gateway, that access point for demons to enter them as well. And you'll hear a lot of the usual lingo. Like I hear it all the time. The Akashic Records Hall. Lucifer has this mimic, Akashic Records Hall, that he copied off the Father. And in heaven, the Akashic Records is all the records of mankind. And there's angels that travel to and from Earth daily with reports and records of things that have been going on in mankind. They could be assigned a human, 2 humans, 3, whatever. They keep constant records of everything you do and say. And so it's all kept at the Akashic Records, the main records hall in heaven. And so Lucifer has a mimic. And so what he does is it's somewhere in the 5th dimension, and he'll allow these hybrids to psychically go there and view the records. and so they think they're hot and all that with all this psychic ability, and you know, they all get very narcissistic about how much power they think they have. It's very hard, and I say this from one with experience, a lot of experience with this. It is very hard to get them to stop worshiping themselves and worship at the feet of the Most High. You just can't get them to do it. Now, there are a few who are hiding in fear and who hide because they've accepted the Lord, and they just don't want bothered. They don't want found. They don't want harassed. They don't want tortured, because that's what will happen to them if they were found. But for the most part, the majority, I just won't even deal with them because there's just no dealing with them. There isn't. They just love themselves so much. They're just so enthralled with all this demonic and satanic power that they have that they can't see the need for a savior. They can't grasp the concept of needing a savior. That's pretty much when you know you're dealing with a hybrid. Because they cannot humble themselves. They're not humble at all. You know, as a believer of the Most High, there's one point in your life where you humbled yourself and realized you were a sinner and that you were lost, and you accepted Yahushua as your Savior, and you began to grow in Him and follow Him. You know, and then there's just this whole hybrid faction who can't grasp the fact of humbling themselves and following after someone else. You know, because they are themselves. They're a world of their own. I mean, they're just gods themselves. That's how they all act. They're just impossible. I don't even deal with them now. I stopped that years ago. I had enough. You know, I'm one of these people that I'm real soft-hearted. I want everybody to go to heaven. Everybody needs Yeshua. And so you're patient with people, and you put up with a lot, and you just wait for them to just open their eyes, open their ears, see things, hear things, and you know what? Eventually, you just get stomped on enough, and you just see this is not working. This is going nowhere, and that's enough. That's just enough. You know, you have to go through a learning curve. That was my learning curve because it was the first time I'd ever had to deal with super soldiers and hybrids and all this other stuff that the Father was and I don't know, it just came at me. It really does. I've gone through the ringer with all these different types of project people and hybrids and kids sent to kill me, and you know, I've had adults tell me that they were sent to Earth to kill me when they were 16, 17. They were super soldiers, walk-ins, that whole movie series, Resident Evil, a lot of truth to that, where these alien beings jump into a human body and take over that human body. And a lot of them have missions on Earth, and a lot of it's to be assassins. You know, they're coming in for the government to hunt somebody down and kill them. And so I've had quite a few of those. The Anunnaki are a big part of behind the Nazi program that was on Earth. You know, Hitler was always talking about the Aryan race. He was talking about the tall blondes. And the tall blondes at that time actually had a huge nest in Mount Shasta in Northern California. They were deep under that mountain, Mount Shasta. Had a huge city there, probably 20 million of the tall blondes. And they were overtaking the German government. And, you know, the rest is the whole war. The whole thing is such a lie. Everything about that war was just a distraction and lie. So many aspects to it. It was never about overtaking Russia and overtaking the world because, you know, they wouldn't have hightailed it to South America, Antarctica. If they wanted to win, they could have won. I mean, they had Foo Fighters, which were alien UFOs. They could have put weapons on them and shot the Americans and everybody else out of the sky. I mean, the whole thing, the whole aspect of it being a genuine war on their side was a lie. They used all that as a distraction so they could do other things in the background. They were testing chip-implanted soldiers. They were doing all this stuff, all these experiments. And, of course, you know, I mean, the Americans and everybody else thought there was actually a war going on. I don't know. It's not to them. Anyway, Mount Shasta, for a long time, every president that became president of America would go visit Mount Shasta, go visit the tall bonds. And so being the warriors that we are, we completely saturated Mount Shasta with Oregon and have chased them out of there. They're no longer in Shasta, much to the New Age despair. The New Agers love that place. It's like a mecca point for them. Go to Mount Shasta. There's nothing there now. You know, they've all left. They went to Hawaii. So, you know, it's all coming to a head because I've talked to you about who the Ashtar Command is, and they're tied in with the whole tall blonde Mount Shasta people, race that was under there, the tall blondes, the Aryans, Hitler referred to them as. They are tied into them with Hawaii and Japan. They're all like a huge alliance. I told you the Japanese are tied in with the Ashtar Command, and they had superior technology, space technology. And they do, because I deal with Japanese more than anybody else, more than the Russians, more than the Americans. It's the Japanese spaceships that can penetrate and come through the portals to Earth and access our aerospace. They have superior space technology. That's where most of their money goes. Most of their stuff is. People think, oh, it's Honda and Samsung and you know, all this other stuff. It's actually space. They're actually much more involved in space than people could imagine. And because they're aligned with the aliens. They're aligned with Ashtar and the tall blondes and these alien races. That's also known as the White Dragon Society. They call themselves the White Dragons. And they're a faction against the New World Order, against the Nazi faction that America runs. Putin's also against the Nazi faction. They have their own faction. And everybody thinks Putin's coming to save the day in America. He's got his own faction. They're the bear faction. And in America, it's the lizard faction. It's the reptile faction, America and Europe. Russia's the bears. It's just a different faction, folks. Why do you think it's called the Russian bear? You know, and all you see in Star Wars is a big Chewbacca representing the bear race. You got Chewie, you know, really? There's a whole constellations of these bears. We call them Bigfoots in America. That's why they can't be caught and they can get away, because they're dimensional beings. When you see them on Earth, they're in their third dimensional state, but they're always associated with UFOs because they're from space. You know, they come down here to map out the areas, get a feel of the terrain, do all kinds of experiments. I don't know I don't know what all they do. They look like just a bunch of apes walking around. They have something to do with terrain mapping. But they're just worker bees. And you know, the Big Dipper and Small Dipper, the Big Bear constellation, the Little Bear, whatever. That's all theirs. The constellations, the bears. They control Russia. They're the ones behind Russia. Oh, I know I was backtracking. I was talking about the Anunnaki, who were behind a lot of the MK Ultra mind control super soldier programs, all that crap that's taken a hold of our Pentagon and our military bases, trying to turn people into transhumanists and the super soldiers and all that. That's pretty much a mixture of the anarchy, what they're doing to mankind. And so they come back and forth. They're back and forth. That's why they claim Earth is theirs. You know, they want people to believe that mankind was created out of test tubes and they're our creators. And these are the parts of the lies that they're pushing, that they are our creators, to negate the whole fact that man was created in the Garden of Eden. They don't want you to believe in God. They don't want you to think the Garden of Eden never existed. They're always pulling you away from God. Away from God. So that's why they come up with these doctrines and theories, New Age and general garbage, to pull you away from what the truths are. So, but they're part of the reptiles. They're a faction of them. There's a bunch of different ones, because let me backtrack a little bit. All the reptiles, the fallen angels that had fallen with Lucifer, that built their technological city of gateways and stuff, advancement at the Persian Gulf. That was the initial gateway that they had created to get access on Earth so Lucifer could get into the garden. They put another one over there. He got in over there to seduce Eve and Lilith. But their whole city was destroyed under that desert, underneath the Persian Gulf water, that mountain that was there. It's all been destroyed. Their offspring, their children, broke off. They create their own groups because, you know, these beings live for thousands of years. They're not immortal, but they'll live for thousands of years, and they'll procreate, so then their children live for thousands of years. The Anunnaki are just part of their offspring, basically. It's an offshoot group of Lucifer's fallen angels group. Then you have the Greys, which I said are Lilith. Anything with almond eyes, any kind of almond eye alien is an offspring of Lilith. Lilith and the whatever, because she has relations with anything that moves. So she has different beings all over space. The almond eye races on Earth are hers as well. The Asian races are hers, her offspring. And she has no tolerance for the Father, the Most High. Absolutely none. She has nothing but 100% hatred for him. And even today, if a Chinese or Asian, or particularly in China, Christians are hunted down and killed daily there. Zero tolerance for anyone believing in God. That's how much Lilith hates him. And she'll kill any of her offspring that worship him. So that's why you have an atheist China that is so intent on killing Christians over there. And there's thousands of Chinese every year that die. Where's the outrage for that? Where is Chinese lives matter? I mean, they're killed just for believing in the Most High God, true Creator. But there's never any outrage about that. Well, Satanists that run the world, they revel in that kind of stuff. And all that's coming to America. Christians will be persecuted. They will be killed. They already are. You know, they sit in the background and just take them out like popcorn, and people don't even see it coming. They don't even realize what's going on. You know, they can give you a brain aneurysm. They can give you a heart attack. They can give you cancer. This stuff is assassination techniques that they use. This isn't Hollywood. Very rarely do they walk up to a parked car in a driveway and shoot you in the head unless you're a doctor who just came up with a cure from cancer. That's what, you know, they outright take them out because they want them to be, other doctors to be intimidated. They want other doctors to know that that was a personal murder, personable hit. But usually when I want to take somebody out they don't like, they get them with cancer like they did Chavez, or they get them in plane crash, or heart attacks, brain aneurysms, etc., etc., etc. They'll take the slower route to ensure the death, you know. Heart attacks aren't always successful for them. A lot of us have had heart attacks and we survived them. Actually quite bored having to deal with it in the hospital. Yeah, they get boring points for that, for making me bored for 3 days. I demanded to be let loose. It's funny because I was in the hospital the same time other men came in, and they're still sitting there when I left. I mean, guys just got to go for the drama, you know. I'm just like, get me out of here. I want out of here. Guys always like to be babied. I don't know what it is. I couldn't be in there. I had to get out. But that's how they get you. And I heard about the heart attack milk where they have this juice they put in your milk and it can cause an instant heart attack. Yeah. But anyway, some of these other races coming in also aren't either Lilith or Lucifer's kids, offspring in any way, associated with any group. Back when Lucifer rebelled against heaven, and I talk about this in my book, Interview with the Devil, they had a Large Hadron Collider type thing in Nibiru, and they were pulling in all these different beings from other universes into ours, and they got trapped here. You know, once the rebellion started and Lucifer unleashed all these creatures on the world, on the heavenly planets, like he's going to do here on Earth, he's going to do the same thing. He's bringing in all these creatures through CERN. He's stocking them up and hiding them in various places, and then he's going to unleash them on the world all at one time. That's what he does. And so a lot of them are trapped here, and they've created colonies on distant planets and hiding all these years, creating their own colonies and communities, and they war against Lucifer and Lilith's children as well. And there's always fighting going on in space. Different factions, different groups. I'm just trying to describe why and where they all come from, how they even exist. And so, you know, so you can get a basic picture of what's going on around us, you know. I like to deal with the background stuff, and I know you guys like hearing about it, so 90 seconds. The show goes fast. So I guess that's it until next week. I'll get back into more of this. Till then, folks, don't forget to support your favorite ministry online. I need to get bills paid. Go to SherryShriner.com and click on the GoFundMe link or the donate button. Or you can send money through Facebook. There's a send money feature. Anyway, until next week, everybody. God bless.